early warning signals are rarely invisible. They're often present, discussed, and even monitored. The challenge is that they do not always appear decision relevant. Bruce McIndoe explains why organizations see signals, yet still fail to act in time. Welcome back. You're listening to Riskmaster, the download, where I share bite-sized insights from our latest interviews. These highlights come from a conversation with Bruce, where we explore a critical question for enterprise risk management, crisis management, and business continuity planning. Why do organizations identify early warning signals yet struggle to act on them? The discussion focuses on how signals are interpreted, how decisions are prioritized, and why many indicators never become actionable within risk management processes.
And this I spent, a lot of my time, first 14 years of my career in the intelligence community, and I was actually spent a lot of time developing indication and warning systems. So warning intelligence is all about surfacing these weak signals, right? That are weak, right? Ambiguous, contradictory, right? So you have to kind of look at different, scenarios. And they are distributed across, domains, what we call, warfighting domains, but also warfighting capabilities, air, space, ground. So it's the same in commercial world, right? One team sees a, geopolitical indicator, another supplier issue, a cyber anomaly, but no one is looking at those fragments, what we call intelligence fusion, right? They don't look and bring that and say, oh, wait a minute, that cyber is actually related to that actor, which is causing, they're not picking that up, right? So I guess, the problem is not that the signal's invisible or weak. They are out there. It's that it didn't look decision worthy, and nobody elevated it and to the people where it mattered and that they can take action on. So I guess that's what I see in the warning gaps in commercial companies.
And I think just listening to you, the challenge is the fragmented signals, right, as you described them, on their own are probably not particularly meaningful. It's only when people connect the dots, as you just outlined, that it starts giving a different storyline or picture. So how do you think people should address that? Because it's, in very large organization, you're being bombarded with signals all over the place.
I guess, part of this, and I know in your list of things, you talked about culture and those kinds of things, and it's, it starts with like, how are you organized and how do you look at the problem and who's involved with the problem, right? In fact, when I start with companies, I always tell them everything that I'm telling you today that I think you should be doing, you already did, and it was hugely successful. And then they look at me and like, what? And you had an existential threat, COVID. What'd you do? You put it together a team, multidisciplinary team. You gave them all access to the same cross-functional data, and you said, save the business. And then you let them execute. And you shorten that OODA loop, right? The decision cycle. They worked together. They came up with solutions. They deployed them. If they worked, they scaled them. If not, they came back, right? And you just work that through and save the business. The mistake you made is you didn't institutionalize that. And that's my thread here today, that if companies would step back and look at the environment and build these teams around the key capabilities that they need for their business, multidisciplinary teams, they're gonna be way ahead in the resilience and risk game.
And building on that, organizations also tend to believe that their crisis plans will guide them, right? When behavior will guide behavior, and when pressure hits, right? So going beyond the fact that they should institutionalize some of this behavior on an ongoing basis, when real disruptions occur, what tend to diverge most from what leaders expected their organization to do? So they thought it will respond and it somehow doesn't.
Right. I think that's an easy one. What usually diverges most is behavior. The documentation's there, right? But it's the behavior. And leaders, expect that these crisis plans and business continuity plans, are going to create clarity under pressure because it's all documented. But, real disruption exposes where clarity, never existed. So, I guess the important point is that, under stress, organizations do not rise to the quality or the lack of quality of their documentation, right? They fall back to the quality of coordination, relationships, decision-making habits. This is where the focus should be. And in fact, when I go into an organization, one of the first things I do when I'm talking to the various departments is I find out what's the connective tissue to the other departments. If they have a low connection coefficient, they're not going to be a resilient company. If they have a high, then they're probably on the right track. Simple metric.
Early warning signals rarely arrive without clarity. They require interpretation, judgment, and coordination across functions. For chief risk officers and senior leaders, this highlights an important shift. Risk management is not only about identifying signals, it is about determining which signals require action before the situation is fully understood. That is where operational resilience and crisis management capability become visible. Listen to the full conversation with Bruce McIndoe on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and itvtm.com.
If organizations use AI to drive efficiency, which is great, but unintentionally remove or automate judgment away from humans, fail.